Welcome, Gareth. Thank you so much for joining us.
My
We are
pleasure.
we're going to read a short bio. I'm going to read a short bio about Gareth, and then we'll kick off. Questions from the audience at any time, but also I have lots of questions emailed into me, which I can't wait to get into. So, Gareth Brown's debut novel, The Book of Doors, which is, of course, the book that we all read, was first published in UK and US in February 2024, and it became an instant Sunday Times bestseller. It also hit the USA Today bestseller list. Um, he's also included the rights to in 20 other territories, including Germany, France, Spain, Italy, and the Netherlands, as well as South Korea and Brazil. So that's pretty amazing for a debut.
Hmm.
The book was an Amazon Editor's Best Books of 2024, and was also a finalist in the Goodreads Choice Awards. So pretty incredible for a debut novel. Your second novel, which looks amazing as well, The Society of Unknowable Objects, will be published in summer 2025. So anytime now. When is that coming out?
Thursday here and Tuesday next week for you.
Well, what timing, eh? We got that
Perfect
spot
timing. Yeah.
on. So, absolutely, if I don't ask you about it, please remind me so that we can revisit that because we'd love to know the synopsis of that book so that everybody can go out and grab a copy this coming week. Gareth spent many years working in the UK civil service, but is currently the director of screening for NHS Scotland. Is that still true?
Yep, still true.
So biogs, they get out of
Yeah.
date. You don't keep an eye on them. When not working or writing, Gareth loves travel, barbecues, playing bass guitar, and watching snooker, which is pool for those of you who don't know what snooker is. And he also enjoys falling asleep in front of the television like an old man. He lives with his wife and two Skye Terriers near Edinburgh in Scotland. Awesome. Well, we know all we need to know then, don't we?
It's all you need.
All right. So we had the very great fortune of reading the Book of Doors this past month, and it was met with so much love. Everybody really, really enjoyed it.
It's
And
great.
also, it's not a genre we read a lot of. We only read
Mm.
one a year. So,
Wow.
but
What
we
is your,
love,
do you mean fantasy?
yeah,
Yeah,
fantasy
right.
or magic realism
Yep.
so we don't go down this rabbit hole very often, but when we do, we always feel so lucky when we find a book like yours because then it really encourages them, our audience and our members to continue down that genre.
Mm.
So I was very happy with that. The first question that I have is the concept of the Book of Doors is magical and mysterious. If you had access to such a book yourself, where would your first door lead?
Oh, oh, that's a great question. Sometimes people ask me what book would I like, but if you're asking me if I had the Book of Doors, where would I go? Oh, I don't know. I like to travel. I love cities. That might be obvious from reading the book, whether it's New York or Tokyo and I hate flying, which is maybe why I wrote the book. I hate sitting on planes. I hate airports. So anywhere that I could go and have some nice food, like if I could leave my little room here and go to New York or Tokyo or anywhere that's got brilliant restaurants and busy streets that I can walk around, I would love that, and I could get home in time for tea as well.
That explains a lot, actually, that
Yeah,
you don't you don't
yeah.
like to fly or visit airports. The next question that I have is Cassie is a bookseller, which is such a grounded literary profession. Why did you choose that role for her, and how does it shape the way she interacts with magic?
So I always thought she would be a bookseller because it's a book about books, and I wanted it to be very booky, if that's not obvious. So, but also I think it's true to the character. So Cassie is almost your quintessential introvert. She likes to be by herself with a book. She's always been alone from a reasonably young age, and I suppose books have been her friends and her family. And maybe that speaks to the magic thing. I suppose books are, was it a Stephen King quote? He said they're a sort of a practical, portable magic. You can open a book and be anywhere you want to be. And so there is that thing where books are magic. And for Cassie, who a lot of Cassie's life, I think, has been about escaping, which is maybe why the Book of Doors comes to her, because it's a device for escape. Books are an easy way to escape. You can escape your mind through a book. If she can't travel, she can travel vicariously through a book. So she is a bookish person. They give her comfort, they give her friendship, and they, I suppose, give her hope in a funny sort of way. And then the real magical books come along and do that for real in a way that ordinary books can't. So she was always a bookish person, I think. And I also wanted to, as a bookish person myself, I think I wanted to show that an introverted bookish person can be the hero at the end of the day as well.
Two questions come to mind, not from my list of questions, but having heard your response.
Yep.
Can you tell us a little bit, sort of about your experience with book? You describe yourself as a bookish person, and you're certainly speaking to the right audience here.
Yeah.
Because,
Yeah, I'm playing to the audience, yeah.
yeah.
As a writer, I'm probably a bit unusual in that I wasn't one of these people who read a lot as a child. You know, I wasn't that kid who had my nose in a book all the time. I didn't really start reading until I was a teenager when I had a friend at school encouraged me to read a Stephen King book, and that was sort of my gateway drug into reading. But I was always, even if I wasn't reading, I was always involved and interested in stories. So I would be consuming stories in films or TVs, and I wanted to be a film director before I wanted to be a writer. And I was always a bit of a sort of a daydreamer. I would lie by myself and tell stories, or when you're playing as a kid, obviously that's a form of storytelling. You know, you're making up stories, and so I always loved stories. I think before I knew I wanted to be a writer, and then having discovered books that I love to read, that for me was it. And I wanted to sit by myself in a room because I'm an introvert and just tell stories and do it all myself, because then I didn't have to worry about anybody else. I could just make it up and have my own fun. And so I didn't really start reading until I was a teenager, and then I read laws. I spent a lot of time reading horror novels as a young teenager, sort of that gateway drug thing from Stephen King. But then I diversified. I sort of grew up and I read other books as well, not just horror novels. And I studied literature at university, and then I read quite widely now, and read everything. I mean, I don't read a lot of fantasy, funnily enough, although it's a fantasy book. I read kind of more mainstream commercial stuff, but I'll read anything. Science fiction, fantasy, all kinds of stuff, literature. I've read it all. So I do love books now, even though I didn't start off loving books, but I've always loved stories.
I'm just taking notes because the questions are just coming to me right, left, and center. So, you said that you're an introvert, and I mean, this is kind of off to left field here, but how have you found the experience of having to do all these interviews and all of the book PR that comes with it?
Yeah. Yeah, I don't mind. I mean, I think I'm probably what I think of as a high functioning introvert, and that I'm not. I don't mind doing this sort of stuff. And I used to play in a band, so I'd be on stage and perform in a band. And
Okay.
I've done a lot of like public speaking stuff at work, and I've done big national conferences and stuff. So I don't. I mean, I'm talking about myself. I know this subject matter
Yeah.
well enough that it's not nerve wracking or anything. It's fine, and I get to talk about books and things I've written, which is great fun.
So, how did you decide on the genre then? If as a debut novelist, how did magic realism or fantasy, how did that become the book you were going to write?
Well, it was a bit of a sort of a potted history in that I got signed with an agent with a different sort of book, and that book didn't sell. And then I wrote a second book with my agent, and we decided not to submit that to publishers because it was all about disease, just as COVID was coming.
Mm.
And my agent was like, "Well, nobody's going to buy this now." So I pitched him various ideas, one of which was this idea of a book of doors. And he said, write that one because it's a book about books and publishers love it. So I didn't sit down and say to myself, well, I want to write a fantasy book in the real world. I had
Yeah.
a whole range of ideas. And indeed, the book I was signed for was sort of more of a science fiction. And then the book
Mhm.
that we didn't submit was sort of probably more of a thriller. So I've never sort of seen myself as I'm a fantasy writer, I'm a magical realism writer. And the Book of Doors is probably it reflects sort of the wide variety of things I read. So I read mostly commercial sort of thrillers, and I tried consciously to write something that was a bit thrillery that you'd want to keep reading. It does have a bit of horror in there, as somebody said. My suppressed horror writer came out at points in the book, and it does have a bit of the magical realism, fantasy sort of thing. So I just try not to stick it in a box. It is marketed as fantasy, and certainly in the UK, it's marketed as fantasy. But I always think of it more of a sort of an adventure book, a sort of thriller adventure book with magic in it.
Kate said, I could definitely see the horror influence in the Book of Doors. Some scenes were creepy.
Yeah, and funnily enough, my UK publisher, there wasn't as much horror in it originally. My UK publisher wanted more, more, more. And when we were trying to sell the book in the US, one of the publishers who didn't end up publishing it, but one of the other publishers who were interested said, "Oh, there's too much horror in it. You've got to take out the horror, make it more of a fairy tale sort of thing." So I don't know what that says about the two countries, where one wants it darker and one wants it lighter. But yeah, there is a bit of horror in it, and some people don't like that because I think it starts off quite cozy, and it's certainly marketed quite cozy. And if you're not prepared for the horror, it can catch you unawares. But it's not too much, just a little soupçon of horror.
Good word. Um, Camilla would like to know if Mr. Weber was inspired by a real character that was her favorite character.
I don't think so. I think I just wanted not to be overly reductive, but I just wanted a nice old man. Just a nice old man who was genuinely a gent. I always thought of him as a gentleman in the traditional sense, quite gentle, quite thoughtful, intelligent, a bit introverted, maybe a bit of a bookish person, but fundamentally kind, I suppose. And I think maybe that's the message of the book more than anything else, is about the importance of kindness. And he was, he met a strange woman who was telling him crazy stories and saw she was in need and just offered, because he could, a place for her to stay. And it all sort of spiraled out from there. So he was lonely, but he was fundamentally kind. So he wasn't based on anybody particular, just that idea of, you know, solitary old people sometimes have stories that are interesting to tell, and they can be lonely, but they can also be kind. So, not anybody particular.
Right. Again, anybody, if you have a question, you can pop it in the chat or you can ask it live.
Don't be shy.
The idea that any door is every door is such a beautiful metaphor. Did this concept come to you all at once, or did it evolve during the writing process?
I actually had the idea for the device of a book of doors, like a book that could turn any door into every door, for quite a long time. But I'd originally conceptualized it as a true fantasy thing, like dragons and wizards and that sort of thing. But as I said, I don't really read a lot of that, so I never did anything with it. And it was only when I was pitching ideas to my agent during COVID, I might add, and I was stuck in this room wishing I could be on holiday. I was thinking, oh, if I could only open that door and go somewhere else. I sort of thought, well, if I take that device and put it in the real world, but I think that any door is every door. I don't know where that was always there. I don't remember a moment where that came to me. I think that was there before I started writing it, and I think that was in the pitch I gave to my agent, and he was like, "Oh, that's quite a nice little way to conceptualize the idea." So it's one of these things where I look back, I can't remember exactly when it emerged or where it came from, but it was always there. I think right at the very outset of, even when it was a fantasy thing, I think I had that little phrase, "Any door is every door," as a wee hook.
Have you ever read Dark Matter by Blake Crouch?
Yeah, I've read that. I've read that. Yeah.
I mean, totally different, but lots
Yeah,
of doors.
lots of doors. Yeah.
Kate wants to know, how did you keep track of the rules about the doors while writing? Did you have a list of all the books?
Um, I had, I didn't have a list of all the books while I was writing, but I did produce one afterwards. And the rules about the books actually weren't that hard to keep track of. The thing I struggled with more was the chronology, because of the time travel. Everybody's read it here, so it's not spoilers, but there's obviously backwards and forth. And I said I would never write another time travel book again, because once you get into the copy edit, some people start picking holes in. But how is that autumn there a bit earlier on? You said it was spring and it was sunny, and it was a complete minefield. So that was hard, because I don't plan things, I just make up as I go. So if I was a proper planner writer, I would have had like nice diagrams, and but I just made it up as I go, and that means end up you change things and you forget that that was spring and now it's autumn and all that. So that was hard. But the books themselves, because although there's a lot of books mentioned, there's not that many books that actually do something, in the main part of the story. There's maybe 4 or 5 where you actually see them doing something important or something pivotal. So that was quite hard to keep. That was quite easy to keep track of. But I did lose track of how many books there were that I'd mentioned, and that's why I did the list afterwards, trying to count up all the books that were either referenced or mentioned or used in the book. But that wasn't the hard bit. The hard bit was the time travel.
Right. There's a clear contrast between quiet domestic life and high stakes magical danger in the story. How did you balance those tones?
Oh, I don't know, and I think I'm one. I mean, I don't know. Generally, I'm one of those writers where I probably don't think enough about the craft side of it. So I write, as I said, I make it up as I go, and I write almost like I'm reading it. I want to discover the plot. So I like, oh, what would happen now, and what would excite me if it happened here, and I write like that. And as you're writing and as you're reading, you need the sort of the peaks and troughs. You can't have full on action for 500 pages.
Yeah.
There's a rhythm to it. You need a bit of excitement and a bit of calm. And it's a bit like when you go to see a band and they've got like 20 songs and they're not all bangers. There's ups and downs and calm bits, and they have to. So there's almost like there's a dance to the sequence of the book. So and I don't think too much about that. I just feel that I need to quieten down a bit here, and then, oh, this is getting a bit boring. I need something exciting to happen, and oh, I need something to come out of left field here. So it's probably more instinctive after having read books for the last 25 years and absorbed what other authors do. That's what drives it, rather than any sort of clear, carefully plotted out plan in my head.
I believe they call you a pantser. Is that correct?
I am a pantser. I'm a proud pantser. I'm in a Discord with a few other authors, and we are segregated into pantsers and planners, and the planners think the pantsers are crazy, and the pantsers think planners are rigid, dreary people. So yes, I am largely a pantser, although you are obviously constantly planning when you're writing. It's not like from sentence to sentence you don't know what's going to happen. It's just I don't sit down at the outset and write it all down, because I couldn't do that. I like to there's lots of things in the Book of Doors that wouldn't have happened if I tried to plan it all from the outset. There's whole characters and whole like I only knew the first scene when I started writing it. I didn't know anything else, and a lot of it just came as I wrote it. So and that's the joy for me, is discovering it as I go.
For those of you that don't know, pantser is from the seat of your pants.
Seat of your pants. It feels like it sometimes, yeah.
Lorraine wants to know if you wrote the book in chronological order or later changed the order and used flashbacks.
Nope, I wrote it as you read it, and I wrote it quite quickly as well. It was about 4 months from start to finish, which is fast. That's unusually fast for me. And it didn't change that much in the writing. There was a plot like Drummond Fox, the librarian. For a long time, I couldn't work out what his motivation was, and he had a different plot until I was about three-quarters of the way through the book, and then I discovered this idea of the hidden library and what was driving him. So I had to re-engineer some of that, but the chronology didn't change. The book as you read it is pretty much as it was written, in terms of order of events and stuff. So no, it happened. It came quite naturally, which was nice, which isn't always the case, I might add.
I feel like so many authors, I mean, I've spoken to a lot of authors, and I feel like so many of them would be just so amazed by that, like that ability that you can do
Mm.
that, because it really is special.
Yeah, it wasn't the second book, the one that's just about to come out. That took me a year to write, and that was a nightmare. So it doesn't always happen that way.
Right.
Sometimes the horse is galloping and you just jump on it, and sometimes you're trying to drag the dead mule to get it to go somewhere. So, but the Book of Doors, it was almost, I don't know if it was like a meant to be thing. It was the book that needed to be written at the time, and it was there ready to be written, and it wrote fast.
Amazing. Rita wants to know if were there some other magical books that didn't make the final cut, and what powers would they have granted if there were?
Yeah, there were other books that I had either just the name for and I didn't really know what it would do, or other books that I had the idea for, but I couldn't crowbar into the plot. So I've kept some back for if I ever do a sequel. I've got other books, and I didn't want to, chock it full of lots of cool books. I want to keep some of my sort of powder dry for sequels, and there's some nice ideas for books I'm not going to tell you about because they might appear in a future book and it'll spoil things. But yes, there are other books out there waiting to be found.
All right. Nikki wants to know if you will write other books about the other books. Well,
Yes,
you just answered that pretty much.
yes, I will. Yep.
And she also wants to know why did you decide to make the most evil character so beautiful and Cassie so average?
I think there was a bit. So I wanted Cassie to be ordinary, not necessarily unattractive, but not a glamorous person, just ordinary, like a normal bookish introvert. I mean, she's not ugly. She's a lovely person, Cassie, but she's not a person who's concerned about her appearance. She wears thrift shop clothes and she doesn't worry about that kind of stuff. She's focused on the interior, I suppose. And the woman being beautiful, I don't really know why that was. I don't know. There's a sort of an archetype of evil as ugly, and I mean, you do see evil as beautiful sometimes as well. But more than her being beautiful, I wanted her to be quite slight and small and almost fragile. So I always imagined her as a sort of a very small, thin, sort of like almost bird-like, but with that sort of fragile beauty that you'll get in like a Natalie Portman type. Very small and compact and thin-boned, but beautiful. So I wanted her to be this almost fragile porcelain, very pale sort of thing. And I think that maybe the beauty just came with that, cold and icy and beautiful. So, but again, I don't know if I thought about it that deeply. I just thought she's a woman and she wears nice dresses and she's beautiful but fragile looking and easy to underestimate if you don't know who she is.
Amy would like to know, because the Book of Doors was written so quickly, how many hours a day did you write to get it done so quickly?
Not that many, because I can type fast, which helps. So I would try and do 2 to 3 thousand words a day. And I can do, if I know what I'm writing, which is half the battle, I can probably do 3,000 words in maybe an hour or so, a little over an hour, like steam coming off the fingers. But I would literally just do it. I was quite motivated at the time because I was thinking my agent's going to drop me if I don't sell this book. So I was trying to demonstrate that I could do it. So I would do it like in a break at lunchtime, or sometimes even at night in bed on the iPhone notes with my thumb. I would do 1,000 words before going to sleep, or on a train if I was going somewhere, or I was on a flight to Switzerland once and I was doing, again in notes on my iPhone. So just where it was like guerrilla warfare, anywhere I could get 500 words down, I would. And I mean, a Book of Doors was about 100,000 words. Most novels are about 100,000 words, certainly thriller, sort of mainstream novels. So if you're doing 3,000 words a day and you can do that consistently, that's about 3 months of work. Assuming you know what you want to write. Sometimes you just get stuck in the mud, but being able to type fast is probably my secret weapon. Because if I had to type 50 words a day, I would be I would lose my mind. I couldn't. I'm so impatient. I want to get to the end, so that's why I go fast as well. I want to get it done. So yeah, having fast typing speed helps a lot.
We've spoken to authors who don't want it to end because they like fall in love with their characters and they're so sad when it's
Yeah, no,
over.
rubbish. I want it over. I mean, I like the editing more than I like the writing. The actual getting words onto a blank page is the hardest bit. That's like the heavy lifting. Once it's all down, and it might be absolute rubbish. I mean, I don't sweat over. I just get it down.
Yeah.
But then the editing is when you can make it come alive and you can tidy up the prose and you can make the characters sing. So I enjoy the editing more because it's almost like improving something and polishing it. But getting it down is just the worst. It's a total slog, and getting through it's the hardest thing.
Camilla asks, why did you decide to have Cassie be the one that created the books? During our book club chapter, we discussed that it wasn't clear if this was actually true or something Cassie imagined.
That's interesting. Maybe she did imagine it. I hadn't thought about that. To be honest, I didn't know that until I came to that point. For a long time I was thinking maybe the books are just there and it's not explained. But I needed Cassie to go through some sort of, even more than she already had, some sort of ordeal. So losing Izzy or thinking she had lost Izzy was a real trauma for her after having, lost her grandfather as a child. Um, the only other sort of real family she had was Izzy, and obviously Mr. Weber by that point. So I needed her. I needed to torture her basically, as a good author does. So I wanted to give her that devastation. I thought if that happens to her, she just wants to escape. And I almost ended up with her in that sort of nowhere place outside of creation without knowing that she was create the books there. And it almost happened without me thinking too much about it. But I did quite like it in the end. I quite liked that she, as a book person who understood the magic of books, was the source of the magical books. And I didn't do this diligently, but almost all of the books that you see in the Book of Doors, the magical quality they have, you can link to an experience she's had in her life. So obviously the Book of Doors is her traveling when she was younger. Like the Book of Pain is obviously she's experienced a lot of pain and she's seen her grandfather having pain. So almost all the books tie back to something else you've seen in the novel and in a way. So yeah, I didn't plan it that way. It was the way the river of the story went that way, and I went with it, and I think it worked out okay.
I agree. Can you tell us a little bit more about Drummond Fox and his secret library? Is he inspired by any literary or real life figures?
I mean, he's a very dashing, handsome Scotsman, so obviously he's inspired by me. No, that's not true. He's not. I think I always knew I needed that sort of. He serves a function in the plot, so he's like the Obi-Wan Kenobi to Cassie. He's the person who knows what this world is, and he'll reveal all the secrets. But I thought, well, why not make him handsome? Because people like handsome men. And make him Scottish because I'm Scottish, and I always wanted the place that his the Fox Library is based on is a real place. There's a hotel that it's based on, and I'd always wanted to go stay there. So I thought, well, make it look like that place because it's lovely. Make it almost like an idyllic castle in the Highlands. So it was a bit of wish fulfillment. I would love to have a house like that in the Highlands with a library like that. But I suppose he's a man who comes from money. He's got a very wealthy sort of family that set up the Fox Library. And maybe that's burdened him a little bit, but he's obviously been through great trauma himself. He's a bit of a survivor, but he's also probably, like all of us, a bit of a coward, scared to face up to the hard things. So he's quite an enjoyably broken and complex person to begin with, and not to be too twee about it, but maybe he's saved a bit by Cassie as well as she's saved by him.
There's a strong sense of warning. Some doors should never be opened. What's the deeper message or theme, if there is one, that you hope readers take away?
Well, I'll be honest, the Some Door Should Never Be Open and was a marketing thing that I didn't come up with. That was a publisher that came up with that. But you're right. I suppose there is a theme. I mean, for me, the theme of Book of Doors is probably more about kindness, but there is something about be careful of what you wish for. I mean, at the start of the book, Cassie is very much enjoying playing in the sandbox. I've got this magical book, I can do these wonderful things. And it's actually Izzy who's, the outwardly ebullient Izzy who's sort of restraining her, saying, be careful, you don't know what it is. So it's that caution thing, I suppose, look before you leap. Because everything that follows that is Cassie sort of getting carried away is as a result of Cassie getting carried away of using the book. So maybe it's responsibility. With great power comes great responsibility. Use it responsibly.
I'm going to change gears a little bit now. Is the goal to write full time? Would you give up your day job and do this?
Yeah, I mean, I'm very lucky that Book of Doors has paid off our mortgage, so I don't have a mortgage anymore, which is incredibly luxurious, and I'm very lucky. So I technically could give up the day job. The problem is I've always had a salary, so taking that step to not have a salary feels quite terrifying. And as nice as the book world is, you can't always rely on the money or when it will come. So, they pay you in installments. And the Book of Doors paperback was put back by 4 months because it was selling so well in hardback. So if I'd been waiting on that payment and then it was 4 months delayed, I'm like, well, we also have dogs who have very expensive tastes. So I need to buy expensive dog food. So I need to work hard to keep them in the manner to which they've become accustomed. But I probably will, I think, try and reduce my hours, my day hours, so I'm not doing like two full-time jobs, which is essentially what I'm doing at the moment. But I haven't managed to do it yet. I haven't quite taken that step.
So how does your day job, or has your day job affected your writing, or has it helped in any way?
It hasn't hindered me. I think during COVID, I'd changed jobs. So previously, I worked very closely with politicians in Scotland, and that was quite a hard, demanding job, which meant I didn't really have a lot of time to myself. So during COVID, although COVID was a horrible time, I moved into the health service, and I no longer had to deal with these sort of irrational politicians above me. So I had a much more manageable, defined set of working hours, and obviously, I wasn't commuting anymore because of COVID. So that job change actually gave me more time to write, which led directly to me getting the agent. So I think that contributed to it. But the day to day job now, it doesn't interfere, and it doesn't help necessarily, but it doesn't interfere. So if it became an interference, I'd have to decide which one I wanted, and I'm sure I would choose the books over the day job. It's much more glamorous.
Rita wants to know if there's any chance that the Book of Doors will be adapted for the silver screen.
That would be nice. The TV production rights were optioned last year or the year before by a production company in the US. But the option lapsed. They had a pitch and they had a showrunner and they were trying to pitch it to the streamers and such like last year, I think it was, but it didn't get picked up. So the option is available again, and there were other companies that were interested while the option was held, but I have heard nothing since then. So it's available. So if any of you are multimillionaire, film producers, feel free to get in touch. But no, that would be nice. I mean, I don't even mind. I don't mind if they change it. I don't mind if it's completely different because the book is always there. There's no downside there to being a TV program, and it would be interesting to see it on the screen to see what they do with it. But it would be nice.
If
Who would
you
play
could,
Cassie? That's a good
yeah.
question. Who do you think? I've heard various. I don't have a strong view for Cassie. Somebody once said to me Sydney Sweeney, which I disagreed with vehemently. Far too glam. But who would play Cassie or the characters? What do you think?
I will leave that open for a moment while we ask you Heather's question. She said her local book club members in Ottawa all like Drummond Fox and would like to have read more about him and his friends. Any chance of seeing this in a future book?
I think Drummond will definitely come back. Any chance of seeing him and his friends? So a bit more of his past, maybe. Yeah, maybe that'd be. I quite liked his little gang of friends who all got killed horribly by the women. It's a shame that they all died. They seemed like a nice bunch. So yeah, it'd be nice to see more of them, or even his younger years when he was like struggling with the burdens of being from a wealthy family in the remote part of Scotland. Yeah, that would be interesting to explore a bit more of his backstory. Yeah, yeah, I'm sure Drummond will be back.
Okay.
Evelyn Pugh. I don't know who that is.
I don't know who that is either.
Oh, do you mean Florence Pugh? Is that who you're thinking of?
Maybe.
Maybe.
And
Okay.
then Kate says, Nikki,
Uh-huh.
probably. um, Kate says, picture Drummond and Cassie as David Tennant, and I know who Billy Piper is from Doctor Who.
Yeah, it's funny. My wife wants it to be, well, maybe she says he's a bit old now, but she pictured it as being David Tennant. I think mostly because she wanted to meet David Tennant because he's very handsome.
You would too.
Um, but he's a tall, very thin Scottish person. He would be great, but he is probably a bit old now. But every time we're watching a TV program now, we're looking up people to see how tall they are because my wife says he has to be over 6 foot. But there's lots of actors out there who could play Drummond Fox. He just has to be able to do a convincing Scottish accent, which isn't always easy.
So these are just some fun questions. Anybody on is please feel free to keep those questions coming, or again, if you want to ask them live, then we can do that. But I have some personal and fun questions.
Ooh.
What books were meaningful to you growing up, and any that you can think of that shaped this novel?
Books that were important to me. So as I said earlier, Stephen King was sort of my gateway drug into being a reader. So the first book of his I read wasn't even a particularly good one. It was Christine about the haunted car, which is bonkers when you think about it. But I think it's more his writing rather than the particular novels. But a lot of his books were very influential to me growing up. There's a Scottish author called Ian Banks, who I don't know who's if he's published over there, but he lived near me. He died unfortunately quite young, but he lived near me. He would alternate writing sort of mainstream fiction and then science fiction every other year. And he was just a sort of an ideas man. He had great ideas. But knowing somebody who lived very close to me, who was a proper best-selling author, was quite influential. And then a lot of like very commercial thrillers books that keep you reading and you don't want to put them down, like things like Red Dragon by Thomas Harris
Mhm.
or anything by like Michael Connelly. I'm a big Michael Connelly fan. Just those sort of they're almost full of tropes, but to be able to do something interesting with them and keep you reading, anything like that, I love. I don't think anything really directly influenced this book, and actually all the comps, all the comparisons that the Book of Doors have been, all the books that the Book of Doors have been compared to by publishers I've not read. So Midnight Library or the Aaron Morgenstern books.
Okay.
Nights. I've not read any, and not because I don't want to. It's just they've never made it
Yeah.
onto my list. So I don't tend to read in this genre. I very much read much more sort of mainstream commercial. So I can't say anything in particular. Probably the sort of horror stuff because there is some horror stuff in there, and horror is about sort of fantastical things in the real world. So those probably is at the root of it. Sort of amazing things happening to ordinary people in the real world, except not being terrifying, which is what they normally are in horror.
Um, what has been the most unexpected part of becoming a published author?
It surprised me how well. I mean, this is a. I don't know if this is sad or not, but it surprised me how quickly the thrill wore off. And I don't mean this to be a sob story, but I'd always wanted to be a writer, and I thought, yeah, it's going to be amazing. But then as soon as it happens, I'm like focusing on everything that's going on, and I'm focusing on the next book, and you don't really get time to like even now the second book's out this week in the UK, and I'm busy writing the third book, and I don't
Right.
really have time to sit back and enjoy it because I've got
Right.
the contractual commitment. So that's surprising how slow everything is
Yeah.
for one of the biggest industries. I mean, I don't know in the US, but certainly in Canada, but certainly in the UK, publishing is a huge industry. But it's like so backwards in some ways. Like like there's no digital systems, there's no metrics or performance data. It's very bizarre how old fashioned it is in some
Yeah.
ways. That's surprising. How nice everybody is. Like genuinely, everybody I've met in publishing's been really nice. Maybe I've just been lucky. But yeah, that's it's more I thought, yeah, all my dreams are coming through. It's going to be amazing, and I'll be dancing through the streets. But no, I was just writing the next book. Had to get the next book done, sort of thing. It becomes a job. I think it very
Yeah.
quickly just becomes a job. But yeah, no, it's lovely. Don't get me wrong. I mean, I wouldn't change it for the world. But those are probably the surprises.
All right. As someone who clearly loves books, do you collect or cherish any special editions?
I not really. I've been lucky enough to have a few special editions of my book made. There's a bookshop in London called Goldsborough Books that does special editions, and they've produced a few of mine, which are lovely. And I do have a couple of first editions, but they're nothing special of other books. But I think I'm too clumsy. I just like to read. Like my wife likes to keep the books pristine, and she gets annoyed with me if the spine's cracked, whereas I'm like bending things. And for me, the value is the story, not the vehicle that gives you the story, the book. But I don't know what it's like over there, but in the UK now, there's a real sort of slice of the market, which is about the covetable special editions with the sprayed edges and the lovely covers and then that's a real, particularly in fantasy, that's a real growing thing in the UK. And some of them are just beautiful. Some of those books are like works of art in themselves, regardless of how good the story is. The cover artwork and the sprayed edges and the gold lettering and all that kind of stuff is, I can see why people do collect them, but no, I'm too clumsy. I'd spill tea on them or something. So I don't.
Who's your first reader?
Of the Book of Doors specifically, or just in general?
Just like who, when you're done, who gets to read it first?
Before the Book of Doors, nobody read it. I was not, I didn't work in writing groups or anything. I would just do it myself and then I put it in a drawer. I would send it to an agent. Book of Doors, it was my agent. My agent read it first, and then the publishers. And then since then, it's pretty much my agent and publishers. My wife will normally read it at the point it's going to go, because she was a journalist, so she's good at the proofreading stuff. So
Hmm.
she'll read it before it's published, but she'll read it to pick up all the sort of grammatical errors that I inevitably make. So it's usually my agent. I've always been just a person who does it myself. I've never had like creative writing friends or been in
Sure.
beta test groups or all that kind of stuff that a lot of others do. I just do it all by myself.
And the books that you wrote, do you think they'll ever see the light of day?
So the book that I wrote that got me my agent, which was about time travel, I think my third book is taking an element of that and turn it into a novel length thing. So that book had a number of different stories in it. So I'm going to take in one of the stories of that and turn it into a novel because I loved that book and I loved time travel. But I think the book as it was is probably not commercial enough to sell because of the way it was structured. So, but and the lovely disease one that we didn't submit might, because that's quite a nice thriller. That might still have a bit of life in it when we're far enough away from the pandemic that it might sell. But anything before that, I'm not sure I would want to go back and look at now because I'd probably be cringe-worthingly embarrassed by what's in it. So no, I think I want all new stuff rather than recycling. Unless I get really, really stuck and can't write anything new, I might go back and pick something in. But no, I think it'll all be new stuff.
And are you a author that, and you're very different from the other authors I've talked to, so I'm
Yeah.
interested in this question. Are you an author that looks at their reviews online?
Ugh. Probably more than I should. So when I started off, I was like, well, I'm awful thin-skinned. I'm a grown man. I don't care about these things. But then I started to read. I mean, my reviews are pretty good, to be honest, even on Goodreads, which can be a bit of a cesspit for some
No, you
authors.
have a 4.04. That's very high.
It is very high. I mean, I
Yeah,
think the more reviews you get, if you get anything above 3.7 on Goodreads, you're doing. I mean, there's
yeah,
absolute
absolutely.
classics in world literature that are like 3.0. So, but I mean, I have had quite strong one-star reviews, and I think that's normal because not every book's for everybody. But I found very early on in Book of Doors, I was reading everything and I wasn't appreciating how annoyed the one-star reviews were making me or how much it was damaging my mental health. I was just walking around constantly scowling. Um, and then I just stopped. I just stopped reading the one-star reviews, just, switch straight to five-star reviews only. Only read the five-star reviews
Yeah,
and your life just becomes better. And
yeah,
I don't mind people not liking my book. It's totally fine.
yeah,
Just don't tell me about it. It's fine.
yeah,
And
yeah,
there's
I agree.
and there's no refunds as long as you bought it. I don't care what you think about it. I'll take your money if you and you don't have to read it as long as you paid me. I don't mind. But on the five-star reviews, when you're having a bad day writing or whatever, and I get lovely five-star reviews and I get messages. People send me messages, particularly Book of Doors. I think because of the grief thing and the loss and the cancer story. That has resonated with some people, and people have told me quite personal stories that they've had that has sort of touched on. So all that stuff is brilliant. That stuff's brilliant, and the five-star reviews are brilliant. I don't bother with the one-star reviews anymore.
Yeah, I think that's for the best.
Yeah.
Let's move on to the Society of Unknowable Objects. Please
Okay, okay.
tell us all the things. What is it about, and why won't we?
So if you like the Book of Doors, you will like Society, I'm sure. So the Society of Unknowable Objects is about the fact that there are ordinary everyday objects in the world that have magical properties. So a bit like in the Book of Doors, there are books that do magical things. In the Society, there are everyday objects that have special properties. And there is a group of people in London. This is a London-based book rather than New York, as was the case with Book of Doors, who meet beneath a bookshop because why not? And have taken it upon themselves to try and collect and look after the magical items so they don't fall into the wrong hands. And the book opens with our main character, Magda Sparks, who is an author by day, um, and her society members discovering that an object might have come to light in Hong Kong. And it's the first time in 40 years a new object has come to light. So she is duly dispatched to become hot and sweaty in Hong Kong to investigate what this object is and is it an unknowable object or not. And then various shenanigans and mayhem ensue, and it takes her all over the world, and including to Alabama at one point. And there's dangerous people, and there's magical items, and there's secrets and intrigue and mystery, and there might even be a few Easter eggs, um, linking back to the Book of Doors as well for those who've read the
Nice,
Book of Doors.
like this. And how do you do your research on places if you don't want to travel in an airplane to them?
I mean, I do travel on airplanes. I just hate it.
Okay.
So Book of Doors everywhere that was in Book of Doors except the South America stuff I'd been. So it was basically me showing my holiday photos for the first 50 pages. And in Society of Unknowable Objects, I wrote it largely because I wanted to go back to Hong Kong. I've been to Hong Kong a couple of times and I loved it, and I just wanted to write about it. So that was easy. But the Alabama stuff, it was the things you can find on YouTube, like people just walking around the backwoods of Alabama looking at rundown buildings. That was an
Yeah.
invaluable source of research for me from my own house in my pants. I could just watch YouTube and I didn't have to go anywhere. That was great, but it's easier. It is easier if you've been somewhere. I think digging into your memories of what it's like to be in a place, the mood and the atmosphere, and that certainly helps with the Hong Kong thing. But otherwise, it's Google Maps, Street View, or YouTube videos.
And can you tell us anything about book 3, or is it still under wraps?
It's about halfway written. I would say it's not magic in the real world.
Okay.
It's a slightly different thing. It's still set very much in the real world, but there's no magic in it. It's probably more of a sciencey fictiony, soft science fictiony thing, set in our sort of contemporary time. And it's a bit like Book of Doors and Societies. It's essentially a what if. What if this thing existed in the real world? What if magical books? What if magical items? This is, instead of a magic thing, it's something else. What if, well, I've said earlier, it's a sort of time travel thing. What if time travel existed in the real world? What would that mean? So it's a sort of a thriller, I suppose maybe a Blake Crouchy type thriller about if time
Okay.
travel exists in the real world. That's what I'm trying. I mean, it might not turn out as good as that, but that's what I'm trying to. That's what I'm trying to do anyway. And I'm about halfway through it. So yeah, that's what the plan is.
And will you publish with the same publisher?
Yeah, the so I had a 2 book deal, and we've just re-agreed another 2 book deals with the same publishers in the UK. It's different publishers, but the same publishers in the UK and the US. So yeah, next 2 books will be the same publishers as well,
Very good. Well,
which is good.
congratulations.
Thank you very much.
And that is all the time we have for tonight. So we will let everybody get back to their lives, and we'll post this on all of our different channels for those that missed it tonight. But thank you so much, well, for writing the book, first of all, and for spending your evening with us tonight. And thank you
Mm,
everybody for joining us as well.
my pleasure. Thanks for the question. It's been fun.
Yeah. Take care, Gareth.
Thanks. Bye.
Bye now.